Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today is the day. Yes, finally. I will be ranking Madonna's entire discography for the very first time. I will be ranking them from my least favorite to my favorite Madonna album. So I will be ranking them based on what I think is her best album to her least best album. I'm just ranking them based on my own personal preference, what I like and what I don't like. I have been wanting to do this video ever since January of this year when I finished my Madonna discography journey. I listened to all her albums for the first time and I ended this series with Rebel Heart. And I've been wanting to do this video since January, February, March, but I felt like I wasn't ready yet. It's very hard to do a ranking video after only listening to a discography one time. So I had to go back and listen to each and every album for a second time, a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time. You know, it went there and it was hard. There were times where I was actually stressed out ranking her albums. Which one do I prefer over the other? You know, I didn't just sit down for 10 minutes and decide, okay, number 8, number 3, number 16, number 15. No, this took weeks to decide. I put a lot of thought into this video and the ranking, and it got me stressed out at times, especially when it came to picking my favorite songs from each album, even a least favorite song from each album, which I will also be doing. As I go album to album, I will also be giving you my 2 favorite tracks from each album and my least favorite. For the last 2 weeks, I feel like I've only been listening to Madonna every day when I go to the park, because I've been going to the park a lot. It's summer, it's warm out, so all I've been doing is listening to Madonna and her entire discography, trying to form a concrete opinion as to how I want to rank her albums. And I feel like I've reached a decision that I'm very happy with. So I'm not going to try and drag out this video. We're just gonna get right into it. So one of the albums had to fall in last place, and it sucks that I have to do this, but I have to pick my least favorite Madonna album, which is number 16, Hard Candy. I feel so bad, but every time I listen to this album, I just can't get into it, and this is the album that resonates the least with me. And you'd think this album would fall further up on the list, because it did come out in 2008. That's when I graduated high school. I mean, I have so many memories associated with the track 4 Minutes and Give It To Me. So you'd think because of nostalgia purposes, I would rank this album higher, but I don't know, it's very hard for me to get into this album. I do like the more R&B sound to the album, but I just don't think it's very memorable. My favorite tracks from the album are 4 Minutes and Give It To Me, and I'll even throw in Candy Shop. I also really like Voices and Devil Would Recognize You, but my top 2 are 4 Minutes and Give It To Me, and my least favorite has to be Spanish Lesson. And I did get a bit of hate for saying that I didn't really care for the track Miles Away. It still doesn't really appeal to me. I can kind of see why it's really popular, but it's definitely not one of my favorite tracks on the album. It's not one of my least favorites. It's probably near the middle, but I've listened to this song multiple times. It just doesn't stick to me. And I'm looking at the track list right now, and nothing is really driving me to want to listen to this album again. Of course, there are tracks that I go back to, but as a whole, it's not really... It just doesn't appeal to me. The highlight of the album, in my opinion, is probably the production. I love the production of this album. But other than that, sorry. So moving right along, we have 1984's Like a Virgin at number 15. I'm a little surprised I ranked this album so low, but I've gone back to it multiple times, and though it's fun, once again, like Hard Candy, I just don't really find myself going back to this album. It doesn't really resonate with me. My 2 favorite tracks from the album has to be Material Girl and track number 6, Dress You Up. My least favorite is Pretender. Of course, there are other great songs like a Virgin. I also enjoy Love Don't Live Here Anymore. Shooby-Doo is really cool. And I remember saying in my first listen video that I didn't really care for the song Angel when I heard it for the first time. but it's actually grown on me, and I actually like it more than I did when I first listened to it. So as a whole, the album is fun, but I don't really find myself going back to it a whole lot. Next up, we have 1994's Bedtime Stories, which I'm not shocked that I ranked this album so low because I was never the biggest fan of this album. It was definitely an interesting experience going from listening to Erotica for the first time than listening to Bedtime Stories for the first time. I think that's why I didn't like this album so much, was because it was so different from Erotica, and I absolutely love Erotica. So maybe because the transition between Erotica and Bedtime Stories was so big that I was almost disappointed with this album. And I don't want to say disappointed because there are actually quite a few songs on this album I really enjoyed. My top 2 favorite songs, Take a Bow, obviously, and Human Nature. My least favorite is Love Tried to Welcome Me. There are other great songs on this album I enjoy listening to, like Bedtime Story, even Sanctuary. I like Forbidden Love. I like the album as a whole, Inside of Me, Don't Stop, Secret Survival, I'd Rather Be Your Lover. But once again, I don't really find myself going back to this album. What I love about this album is the atmosphere it sets. It's more relaxed, it's more chill, it's more sleepy. And when I say sleepy, I don't say that negatively. It's very whimsical, and I enjoy listening to it from time to time. Next, we have a soundtrack album, which, yes, I did include 2 soundtrack albums on this ranking list because I did listen to I'm Breathless and the Evita soundtrack on my Madonna discography journey. So I felt like I should include the 2 albums on my ranking list just because I did include these 2 albums in my Madonna discography journey. At number 13, we have the Evita soundtrack. This is a beautiful soundtrack. Madonna sounds simply remarkable on so many of these songs, and I enjoy listening to this album from time to time. In particular, the tracks Don't Cry For Me, Argentina, and Another Suitcase in Another Hall, which is my 2 favorite songs on the album. And it's very hard for me to choose a least favorite, so I'm actually not going to choose a least favorite on this album. If you are a Madonna fan and you haven't listened to this album yet, I definitely suggest checking it out. There are a lot of fun songs, but there's a lot of emotionally driven songs that got me emotional listening to them for the first time in my Evita video. And I think this album is precious. And the movie itself, I did watch the movie, and I wasn't the biggest fan of the movie. The highlight for me was the music, but the movie, I don't see myself going back to the movie anytime soon. In my opinion, her voice sounds the strongest on this album, the Evita soundtrack. Moving right along, we have the second soundtrack album at number 12. I'm Breathless, inspired by the film Dick Tracy. Now, if we're talking about a fun album, this album is a lot of fun to listen to. I mean, I remember doing the first listen video to I'm Breathless, and I had so much fun. My favorite tracks on the album are obviously Vogue and Something to Remember, and I almost didn't want to choose a least favorite, but you know what? I'm gonna throw in I'm Going Bananas as my least favorite. Even though it's fun, I find that this is the track I go back to least. I also like the tracks Sooner or Later, He's a Mad, More, Back in Business, Cry Baby, What Can You Lose, Now I Follow You, Part 1 and Part 2. I like all the tracks on this album. If I'm in the mood for a goofy, fun Madonna album, I go back to I'm Breathless. Next, we have 2003's American Life in at number 11. Now, initially, I didn't rank this album high up on the list. Number 11. Some of you might not think number 11 is very high, but originally, I remember ranking this album a bit lower, but I've listened to it a few more times, and it's definitely grown on me. I really like the production on this album. I like the meaning. I like what she has to say on this album. I like the lyrics. This album was released back in 2003 during an interesting time in American history. You know, this was 2 years after September 11th, so there's a lot to say. There's political and social commentary on this album. And my favorite tracks are Intervention and Nothing Fails. My least favorite is Mother and Father. Originally, what I was going to do is I was actually going to pick 3 favorite tracks from each album, but I was having a lot of trouble choosing a 3rd favorite track from a lot of these albums because it was hard picking between the 3rd favorite and the 4th favorite. A lot of the time, there was a tie between my 3rd favorite, 4th favorite, my 5th favorite, and it was hard to pick a 3rd favorite. So I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm only gonna choose my 2 favorite. But I do want to point out that I also enjoyed Ecstatic Process and Hollywood. I like American Life as well, Nobody Knows Me. And I do recall saying in my first listen video that I didn't like Die Another Day. I absolutely hated it from what I remember. I'm still not a fan of it, but it's kind of grown on me. But when I listen to American Life, I don't really listen to Die Another Day. We have made it to the top 10, and in at number 10 is 2000's Music, released 20 years ago. And listening to this album for the first time was an interesting experience. The highlight for me is the production. I mean, the production is crazy good. My favorite tracks on the album is track number 1, Music, and track number 7, Don't Tell Me. And my least favorite is, unfortunately, Amazing. This was another album I had issues with picking a top 3. I couldn't pick a 3rd favorite song because it was a tie. It was a tie between my 3rd favorite, my 4th favorite, my 5th favorite, and I couldn't pick a song. I was genuinely getting angry and stressed out, so I was like, fuck it, I'm only picking my top 2. Some of the other highlights for me are the tracks, obviously, you know, tracks like Runaway Lover, Impressive Instant. I really liked What It Feels Like for a Girl, and Paradise Not For Me. Now, originally, Paradise Not For Me was my 3rd favorite, but I was having issues because I also liked What It Feels Like for a Girl. I also liked, I think, Runaway Lover as well. I also like Gone, American Pie. So as a whole, I enjoy listening to this album. One of the reasons why I go back to this album is because of the production. I love the electronic sound, and it's always ear candy to me. I can see why some people wouldn't like this album because it is different, but at the end of the day, this is an album I like going back to once in a while. Next up, at number 9, we have 2015's Rebel Heart. Now, I'm gonna say it, originally, when I was doing this ranking list, I had Rebel Heart in last place. How does it go from last place, originally, to now number 9 on my list? And I thought about it. I listened to the album a few more times, and I also checked out the Super Deluxe Edition last week of Rebel Heart, which has tracks like Graffiti Heart and Addicted and what have you. And you know what? This album's grown on me. When I first listened to the album, it didn't really set well with me. There was something about it that wasn't sticky to me. I don't know what it was. But over time, it's definitely grown on me, and my favorite tracks are Rebel Heart. I don't know if that's surprising, but my favorite track is Rebel Heart, and Wash All Over Me, and my least favorite has to be SEX, Sex. I also want to acknowledge that a lot of people didn't like how I said Ghost Town was just an okay song. It was, I mean, I forget what I said. I might have said it was mediocre, it was solid. But a lot of people were saying that I didn't praise this song as much as I should have, and I've gone back to the song Ghost Town multiple times since that first listen video, and I like the song, but I don't love the song as much as a lot of you love it. And I don't know, it just doesn't stick to me as much as it probably should. Do I enjoy the song? Yes, I like the song, but I don't love it as much as a lot of you think I should. I think one of the reasons why initially I had this album so low on my ranking list was because it's just a long album. The deluxe edition has 19 tracks, and it's a lot. I definitely prefer the first half to the second half. I don't know, I feel like the length of the album was definitely a contributing factor as to why I ranked this album so low initially. But like I said, I've gone back to the album several times, and you know what, there's a lot of solid pop songs on here. I also like the songs Illuminati, and initially I had Iconic as my third favorite song on this album, featuring Chase the Rapper and Mike Tyson. I also like the tracks Joan of Arc, which was also initially my third favorite song, and then I switched it to Iconic, and then Joan of Arc again. I also liked, that's it. I think at one point I might have had Heartbreak City in my top 4. Also, initially, when I was doing this ranking list, I was going to choose my 2 least favorite songs from each album, and I was having issues doing that, so I decided to only pick my 1 and only least favorite song from each album. And initially, Holy Water was another one of my least favorite songs. And I also want to point out that I did misinterpret some of the songs on this album, which happens from time to time. It happens, you know, I'm not perfect, and when I listen to a song for the first time, I try to decipher what the artist is trying to say through the lyrics, and sometimes I'm wrong, so thank you guys for letting me know, and thank you for correcting the actual meaning behind some of these songs. Moving right along to number 8, we have her most recent album from last year, 2019, Madonna'S, and I'm a fan of this album. I think it's a solid album, and track by track, I always enjoy listening to it, going from one track to the next. And it's just a pleasant experience. It's definitely a very unique Madonna album. It's unlike any other Madonna album in her discography. There's a lot of political and social commentary on this album. It's very cultured, and there's lots of interesting sounds, and the production, in my opinion, is one of the highlights. There are quite a few songs on this album I love going back to, in particular tracks like God Control and Dark Ballet. I remember saying Dark Ballad in my first listen video, which was a little embarrassing. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said Dark Ballad. It's Dark Ballet. There we go. I finally redeemed myself. I also want to point out my third favorite song on this album, which is Come Alive. I love that song so much. And unfortunately, my least favorite song on the album is track number 10, Extreme Occident. And I do recall a lot of people saying they didn't like this album. A lot of people were saying this was her worst album, but I've enjoyed this album since first listening to it, and it hasn't grown on me because I've loved it from the get-go. And if anything, I love it even more now. And I also want to point out another one of my favorite tracks, which is track number 13, I Don't Search, I Find. I also like Maluma and Anita. This was my very first time listening to Maluma in my entire life, and my very first time listening to Anita. I feel like this was the album that truly introduced me to Latin music. And since listening to this album, I've been exposed to a few more Latin artists and albums. And I've said this multiple times, I love Latin music. I love Spanish. I want to learn Spanish one day. I keep saying I want one of you to teach me Spanish because it's such a sexy language and I love it. Next, we have 2012's MDNA in at number 7 now. Okay. So, I'm under no illusion that a lot of you don't like this album. A lot of you hate this album. A lot of you list this album as your least favorite and Madonna's worst album ever. But, you know what? I like this album. Initially, I didn't want to rank this album so high up on the list because I knew a lot of you did like it. So I was thinking, well, maybe should I rank it lower? But at the end of the day, I was like, no, I'm going to say it loud. I'm going to say it proud. I like this album. I don't really care what people have to say about that. I enjoy this album. I'm an EDM guy. I like electronic dance music. So this album really resonates with me. It's a lot of fun, and as a whole, it just puts a smile on my face. There are some great ballads on this song, which I wasn't expecting going into my first listen video for this album. My favorite tracks on the album are Gang Bang and Love Spent. Now, that might surprise you, but there's something about the track Gang Bang that just, I don't know, it's so weird and it's so, I can't even explain it. It's just always interesting to listen to this song. And track number 10, Love Spent, it's such a great song. It's meaningful, it's heartbreaking, but it's very beautiful at the same time. And also, my third favorite song is Masterpiece, number 11. I also like the tracks. I like Some Girls, Turn Up the Radio, I'm Addicted, Girl Gone Wild. There's lots of great songs on this album. My least favorite track on the album has to be track number 15, BDAY song featuring MIA. Ugh. So if you don't like this album, if you despise this album, I can understand why, but you know what? I have a sweet spot for this album. And in at number 6, we have 1989's Like a Prayer. Listening to this album for the first time was a very emotional experience for me. And the reason I didn't rank this album higher was because some of the emotions this album invokes within myself. And it's a little difficult to listen to this album because of things I've gone through. And when I listen to some of these songs, it just brings back unwanted memories. So though I enjoy listening to this album, I think this album's a masterpiece. My favorite tracks on the album are Like a Prayer and Express Yourself, and my least favorite is Till Death Do Us Part. I mean, I could also say my least favorite is track number 11, Act of Contrition, but that track is really weird and interesting that I actually enjoy listening to it. I do like Till Death Do Us Part, but unfortunately one of the tracks had to fall at the bottom, and I feel like I go back to this song the least out of all the tracks. So though I really enjoy this album, I kind of have to prepare myself before going into this album, especially when it comes to some of the tracks on here. I also want to say that track number 3, Love Song, has definitely grown on me. I remember not being the biggest fan of the song when I first heard it, but I really enjoy it now. I also love the song Cherish, and I also like the song Oh Father, and I want to say that my third favorite track on the album is Promise to Try, even though that track is quite emotional for me, as is the track Oh Father. Also, track number 10, Pray for Spanish Eyes. I mean, I love that song so much. We have made it to the top 5 of my list, and in at number 5 is her very first album from 1983, her debut album, Madonna. Now, if you told me a year ago that I would rank her debut album at number 5, I would have laughed in your face. Whoa, I was like a Disney villain. When I first listened to this album, I didn't really care for it. I remember saying I didn't like how some of the tracks were really long, that quite a few of the tracks just kind of kept going on and on, like track number 2, Borderline, 6 minutes and 57 seconds, which was stupid for me to say, honestly. I really love this album. I find myself going back to this album quite a bit, and I don't know why I'm so drawn to it, but my favorite tracks on the album are Borderline and Holiday, and my least favorite is Physical Attraction. It's a short album, but I like all the songs on here. Even though I said Physical Attraction is my least favorite, I still listen to that song. Everybody's a great song, and Lucky Star, Burning Up, I Know It, Think of Me. I feel like this is a very consistent album and all the songs are great. And what's interesting is when I was editing my first listen video for her debut album, I actually edited out a part where I said that if I was to rank these albums, Madonna's debut album would probably sit at the bottom. I think I edited that part out. I don't remember, but I think I did because I didn't like what I said there. I was concerned that I would maybe offend some people because going into this album, I knew that it was highly praised and it's considered one of her best albums. So I didn't want to say that in the video. I didn't want to say that, you know, down the line, if I was to rank her albums, this would probably sit at the bottom. But ironically, it now sits at the top. Next, we have True Blue from 1986 in at number 4. Now, this album always puts me in a good mood. It's so much fun. I listen to this album all the time, and it's really great. My favorite tracks are Live to Tell, which is my number 1, and Open Your Heart, No Surprise, is my number 2. My least favorite is Where's the Party? Surprisingly, but out of all the tracks, I mean, I had to pick a least favorite, and unfortunately, Where's the Party had to sit at the bottom, but I still listen to that song. I also really like the tracks True Blue, La Isla Bonita, Jimmy Jimmy, Papa Don't Preach. Now, I will say, Papa Don't Preach isn't one of my favorite Madonna singles. This song never really stuck to me, but I still like it. It's just not one of my favorites. I remember watching the music video for True Blue for the first time, and after watching the music video, I was obsessed with the song True Blue. I was listening to it nonstop for an entire week. I couldn't get it out of my head. I know a lot of you love True Blue. A lot of you have told me that True Blue is your favorite Madonna album, and I can see why. It's a great, solid album. So here we have it, the top 3, my 3 favorite Madonna albums of all time. Do you know which one's my favorite? Well, in at number 3 is 2005's Confessions on a Dance Floor. I mean, what is there to say about this album? It's one of her best known albums. A lot of you love this album. Some of you have said this album's overrated and you don't know why it has so much praise, but as a dance music guy, as an EDM guy, I love my dance music, and this album really resonates with me, and I always have a lot of fun listening to it. My favorite tracks on this album is Sorry, and surprisingly, I really like the song Isaac, number 10. There's something about that song I really enjoy listening to. I also like the tracks Jump, and I really like Forbidden Love. Now, originally, I had Forbidden Love as my 3rd favorite song. Hung Up and Future Lovers. I do like Get Together. My least favorite track on the album is Push. I mean, honestly, I'll listen to all the songs on this album. It's a great, solid dance album from Madonna. So here we are at my top 2 favorite Madonna albums of all time. In at number 2, from 1998, Ray of Light. This album, this album's beauty. This album is art. This album really resonates with me. It's a very powerful album. The production and the lyrics, her voice, it's absolutely stunning. My favorite tracks on the album are Ray of Light, obviously, and The Power of Goodbye. Now, track number 9, Frozen, is a close 3rd. I will also say my least favorite track on the album is track number 4, Candy Perfume Girl. But to be honest with you, I enjoy all the songs on the album. I love going track by track, and it's definitely atmosphere, and it's like therapy. It's like going to a spa. It's very tranquil and meaningful and just simply remarkable. I also love the tracks Skin and Sky Fits Heaven. I also like Swim and Drowned World, Substitute for Love. So here we are, finally at number 1. My number 1 favorite Madonna album of all time is Veronica from 1992, no question. I mean, listening to this album for the first time was an experience. Just like listening to all of Madonna's albums for the first time, but this one in particular, it really spoke to me, and it really stirred something inside of me, and it's provocative, and it's art, it's beautiful, and I love everything about this album. My favorite tracks on the album are Deeper and Deeper and Rain, and unfortunately my least favorite is probably Did You Do It, track number 13. But I also want to point out some of my other favorite songs. I mean, I like all the songs. Surprisingly, my 3rd favorite song on this album is Waiting, which was never a single, but track number 7, Waiting, I love this song. I feel like it should have been a single. It's great, and I always love listening to it. I also love Erotica, obviously, and I like Bye Bye Baby. I like Thief of Hearts. I like Bad Girl, In This Life. I mean, I like all the songs on this album. If I want to sit down and listen to a Madonna album, this is the one I always pull up first. I always listen to it when I'm cleaning, or maybe I'm doing the dishes, I'm walking in the park. I just always listen to this album. I remember listening to Rain for the first time in my first listen video, and I fell in love with it. It was simply remarkable, and it's still remarkable. I mean, Rain is one of my favorite Madonna songs ever. Same with Deeper and Deeper, and I can't praise this album enough. I can't even articulate how much I love this album. I'm just so excited even talking about it. We all know how controversial this era was for Madonna when this album came out, with the sex book and the imagery, the sex talk, very provocative, very explicit. I've heard a lot of people say that this album is underrated, and it definitely is underrated because it's my favorite Madonna album of all time. And I mean, all you have to do is sit in a dark room late at night in your living room or your bedroom, light a candle, light a couple candles, and just listen to this album track by track. It's definitely an experience. So I think that's all I wanted to say. I feel like I could go on and on, but I'm gonna stop here. I think I said everything I wanted to, and that is my ranking of all Madonna's albums. Will it change in the future? It might. Not a whole lot. I might end up switching a couple albums here and there, but I'm pretty sure this is very true to what I think are my favorite Madonna albums and my least favorite. So what is your ranking? What are your favorite Madonna albums? What are your least favorite Madonna albums? What are your favorite tracks from her albums, and what are your least favorite? And what are your opinions on her albums? Have your ranking list changed over the years? Maybe you started listening to Madonna in the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, and since then, your rankings have changed. So an album you had at number 3, maybe now is number 1, or an album you had number 12 is now number 8 or lower. I don't know. Leave a comment. So thanks for watching, guys. You can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Twitter, you can message me, you can tell me other artists I should check out. I'm open to any artists from any decade. You can find me on Apple Music, you can check out my playlist, you can find me on TikTok, so on and so forth. So thanks for watching, guys. Until Madonna's next album, I mean, when is Madonna going to release her next album? Leave a comment. Tell me when you think Madonna is going to release her next album, and what theme do you want her next album to be? What do you want her to play around with musically and lyrically? So, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.